Hello everybody, and welcome to the second video in my series, B4Theatres. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing A Long Way Down by Nick Hornby. It's a story about 4 people who wanted to commit suicide on New Year's Eve because they can't bear to continue their lives anymore in the way in which they're taking them. Each of the strangers have their own reason for being there and why they want to end their own lives. It's only when they're put together and they are taken out of their own heads for a while and they see other people's reasons so that they begin to understand how other people feel, and maybe that suicide isn't the option. They still want to kill themselves and they still hate life. But when they get talking, they kind of realise that there could be another way. Why do they have to kill themselves now? Why can't they just delay it? In the end, they end up walking down from the top of the building they're at, which I like the topic because they don't give up on suicide. In their minds, they're still going to kill themselves. But why does it matter if they kill themselves now or in 12 hours time? They've accepted their lives are over. The initial interactions between the characters are probably my favourite part of the novel itself, and in my eyes it was a masterpiece. There's no other way to look at it. It was just hilarious, and I don't know why, but the fact that I was laughing at people wanting to kill themselves made it that much more funny to me, and just the way they interacted. The characters bounced off each other so well. They had no right being together. They had no right to be this funny and to be this brilliant a piece of dialogue, but he found a way to do it. Personally, I love the moment, and I'll put a clip in it now because you can see it in the trailer for the film.
I'm Martin Sharp, the man who had everything. Divorce, disgrace, humiliation. Why wouldn't I want to throw myself off a tall building?
Excuse me, are you going to be long?
What?
Maybe I should just wait.
I'll give you a shout on the way down.
The dialogue and the relationships between the characters are just so strong. It just made me love them and made me engrossed in the story. If you look closely at my eyes, you'll see the remnants of last night where I didn't sleep because I just read the entire book in one night. I couldn't put it down. I just wanted to see how the story was going to play out. I wanted to see what they would do. They hated each other, but they needed each other. It was just powerful stuff and brilliant to watch. Admittedly, there were drawbacks with the novel, like in any story out there. For starters, I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the middle parts. I did feel it dragged a little bit. That's only because when you're telling 4 different characters' motivations wanting to kill themselves, you have to go into detail in these characters, and there were times where I didn't care about what was happening in Jess's life, or I didn't care what was happening in another's. But then I only had to turn like another page and I'll be back to another character I was fully engrossed in, so I wasn't really too much to complain about. It was just drawbacks here and there, and I would say that the ending, although powerful, it did kind of seem... I was expecting a little bit more, but that was just me because at 5 in the morning, after like 6 hours of reading, you're expecting something pretty extraordinary, and it fell a bit flat. My favourite character in the story itself was Maureen. She was a 51-year-old woman who... She was a regular girl to the church. She had a disabled 19-year-old son. She had no job, she had no husband. She'd only ever had one relationship with one man, which had caused her to have her son who could do nothing. He was, as described in the story, a vegetable. And she spent 19 years of her time doing nothing. She never got out, she never did anything. So she wanted to die, and she was fully justified in doing it. With Martin, there was the whole, oh, it'll get better over time. With Jess, it was that you're just a nutter. With JJ, it was, you're just being melodramatic. But with her, every other character could even see it. She deserved to die. She deserved to have her passage away from the horrible life in which she was living. But because she was at the bottom of the barrel, that's what made her journey so much more powerful. We got to see her involved in this relationship with the others. She was the quietest. She was the one who fit in the least. But then she also grew from the experience the most. It's sad. I was really choked up at one point because they took her on holiday. They did this like sequence between her and JJ talking, and she said she'd never been abroad, and just like, what if she could have anything in the world, anything whatsoever, all she wanted was a holiday, maybe a pub quiz, and a job. That's all she wanted, just something in her life to keep her occupied. And the group took her on holiday. Sure, the holiday didn't go fully as planned, but it made her life. She was crying and just so happy that people would care about her that much to do something for her, even to just suggest the idea, and that was really heartbreaking. And to see her rise throughout the story, it made it worthwhile for me. I feel like it's weird for myself to be more connected to the 51-year-old woman than some of the younger characters, but I just couldn't help it. She was so powerful and she made the story for me. Aside from Maureen, you also had JJ, who was a American failed musician who was stuck in our country delivering pizzas. He saw his life going nowhere, and he thought the only option he had was to kill himself, because it was better that than 40 years of misery. The way in which JJ looked at the world and his philosophical views really made the story quite interesting for me as well, because he looked at things differently to the other characters, and he looked for inner meanings in things which the other characters just completely missed. I mean, there was times where it got a bit tedious, but that was also part of JJ's character. He was quite far up his own arse, he had such high estimations of himself, and he saw things as below him. The fact that his music career was over, so he thought he had to kill himself, said it all. If he wasn't going to be a musician, he didn't want to be anything else. So the fact he was also a bit pompous, in a way, to me, anyway, I thought it worked quite well. I still like the guy, and he still grew throughout. The way that it ended for him, I don't want to spoil it, to be fair, because the ending is the only thing I don't want to give away, I guess. But it was just quite nice and uplifting, because although it wasn't what he wanted, there was never going to be the fully happy ending. Like, everybody's happy ever after, nobody wants to ever kill themselves again. It was never going to be that, but it was just nicely done, and it kind of showed that he'd grown as a person and moved on from his petulant ways beforehand, which was nice to see. Then of course there was fucking Jess. Jess made me laugh. She was so just funny, bouncing off of everybody because she was so broken. I knew girls like her, I guess, which made it funny for me, because when I was back home I knew the chappy girls who would speak like that, and it just made me laugh. I could picture them in her situation, and she was rubbing everybody up the wrong way, and it was just great to watch. She starts it as well, completely unhinged. There's no other way around it. She is a broken woman, okay? Like, she would scare you if you went up against her in the street, okay? I would run. I think anybody in their right mind would run. You don't want to mess with Jess. But later, as we get further through the story and she begins to open up, you begin to understand more about the character, and you do actually feel for her. She's not just some stupid child. She's been through a lot, and the mistakes she's making are because of how bad her life has been. But by being with these strangers and the experiences she's having, she's improving as a person. And she's proud of herself for doing it. She can see her changes, and she likes it, which is really interesting to. Then of course there's Martin, who is the typical grumpy old git. I love him. He's hilarious. He's a failed, well, I say failed, he was a TV presenter who was pretty successful, but after a mishap with a underage girl, he is now hated in the public eye. The tabloids are abusing him. He can't go anywhere. His career's over, his family is destroyed, he wants to kill himself. And I don't know, it's just the way he interacts with everybody else is just brilliant, because he hates everybody and he lets them know. Him and Jess bat horns every other fucking second, and it's brilliant. You put them two up against each other and I will happily sit there and read it for an hour. It's just brilliant, gripping stuff. His story was probably the least interesting for mine. I mean, he was one of my favourite characters, but his story wasn't exactly great to see, because it was just him realising, yeah, I've been a bit of a prick, better change that. Changing is kind of difficult though. Oh well. To conclude, the story it covered was powerful, and as I've said several times already, I fucking loved it. It was awesome. It was a great story, and it had such powerful messages to take from it, but also the comedic side, and it made it entertaining. You wanted to be reading it, and you also felt you were learning. Especially personally as well, I went through some tough times a couple of years ago. I think most people have in their life. And there was a time when I was pretty depressed. And it was quite funny for me to read this, because I thought, see, my issues, if I ever wanted to kill myself, my issues back then would have been ridiculous. I would have been the guy up there on the roof trying to make it sound better, lying about it so I don't look like a fool in front of everybody else. What he manages to do is he manages to take a topic which so many people can relate to, and he just takes a different viewpoint in it. We've always viewed suicide in a certain way, and if you kill yourself, it's bad. That's it. You know, they just go, oh, that person was sad because they killed themselves. But you don't really think of the people who are struggling in life who consider it, and this takes you through that, and that process from stepping down off the cliff and going, no, I want to survive, and just fighting back against it, and it's just really interesting. I keep saying interesting. The more times I say interesting, less interesting sounds. But whatever, moving on. It's just, I love this story, okay? I'd recommend this to anybody just because it's such a great read and it's so different. I'd give this, honestly, a 8.5. Only because I thought it dragged a bit in the middle. I'd give it 8.5 out of 10. It was one of those things I'm really glad I read, and I feel like I'm a better person for reading it. If I haven't read that, I felt I wouldn't be the same. It's changed me reading it, and I'm glad that I did it. And I want to say thank you to the author, because it really was important to me. I can't wait to see the film now as well. I just don't know what to say anymore. Just thank you. That was amazing. Read this book.